I'm going to go through the first of four decks that I reconstructed last year for it looks like it was an Alice cluster only competition by ARG. But also in the previous video in this playlist, I cracked 12 Twilight Wanderer packs, and once again, because I'm an old dude, I forgot to do a retrospective of the cards that I pulled. And also I'm not sure that I'm going to make my 15-minute limit for my camcorder for this deck discussion. It may be that this ends up being a two video one. I don't really know. We'll see what happens. Everything that I do is fairly on plan these days, just because I only have so much time, and there's only so many cards and so much time. So these are the cards that I pulled in those 12 packs. I pulled a bunch of Rewriting Laws, pulled a couple of Barrier of Shadows, and Scorn of Dark Alice, and Final Forfeit, another. So I pulled a few. That's really great. I pulled one base rarity Adam Bradley. That's fantastic. Then I also pulled a Reflect Refrain, which of course I'm going to be talking about in this video and the next, for this deck and the next deck. I don't really know how many videos. Pulled a nice stamped Schrodinger, a nice stamped Valentina. I already have the regular base rarity one, which is the one that I'm going to be using for a deck build. Okay, so there you go. That was the retrospective that really belonged in the previous video. Sorry about that. Just an old dude forgetting things. Alright, so Reflect Refrain has an errata that basically, I think the errata is all about doing things on your turn, because the way the card is written, you could do it originally on your opponent's turn. It's totally busted. It's got zero costs. I think I'm going to read it for this video, but for the next deck, I have a second deck after this, which is a different Reflect Refrain. This is a Reflect Refrain, basically red deck, and the other deck is basically a black deck. It's multicolored because I use Ruler's Memoria, which means that you can use any will. Alright, so let's just go through Reflect Refrain in this one video, and this will probably bump me up to a 2 video per deck thingy, but I don't mind, because I think this card is very important in Force of Will. I think historically, I really hope I say it in almost every Force of Will video, that Force of Will endures, passes makes it past the first rough years. Hopefully it'll last for 10, 15, 20 years. That would be amazing. I really hope that happens. Whether that does happen or not, this is an iconic Force of Will card. It was hated by many when it was in New Frontiers because it is completely busted. But as I mentioned in a previous video when I pulled one like it, this is a first edition one too, which is nice. Every game, every trading card game needs at least one busted card that people both love and hate. And there have to be people who love it. I love it. I think it's a great card. I think it needs more errata perhaps, but it is so busted and so good that you can use it on pretty much almost any color deck you ever wanted, any attribute, because even though it's green, it's a wind, that means nothing. There are zero green labeled things happening in this card. You can basically have 2 people, each player, right now for $2.50, buy each of them, new players even. Hey, I got my own Reflect Refrain, you got your own Reflect Refrain. You can slap this as your generic ruler on every deck of Force of Will you will ever build that doesn't have a rune deck. So that encompasses Grim, Alice, Lapis, and Rhea. That is 16 sets of Force of Will and I hope the packs continue to be cheap, and if they get expensive, there should be a reprint set. This card would be in that reprint set. So would Cheshire Cat from Two Towers, of course. Alright, so let's just talk about this card. And I'm just going to move it up, and hopefully I won't flicker too much so you can read it as I talk. So for 0 cost, you pick 1. Okay, you play this ability once per turn on your turn. That is the errata. I was reading it before I made this video. Target Resonator gains +2/+2 until end of turn. put a magic counter on this card. So you keep putting magic counters on this dude, and I believe you do not lose them when you flip them. Okay? And I'm on the ruler side. The judgment costs 0. That's busted. Totally busted. And maybe that's one of the things that should be in the errata. It should be a judgment with a green, with a wind ability. I think if they did that, they'd make it more in attribute. Okay, or draw a card, put a card from your hand on the bottom of your main deck. So you're kind of replacing something bad in your hand. And you put a counter, magic counter on this dude. Or, so this is your third clause, recover target this resonator at the end of turn, put a magic counter on this card. And that also, I think, got a route out to something like at the end of your next turn, something like that. So that was cleaned out. And maybe, you know, if they errated it really well, they could take out that clause and then leave it down to 2. I don't know. Or maybe do a new Reflect Refrain ruler that isn't so busted. But this is a great card, I think. Then for all of 0, boom, you flip it. I'm not going to talk about Reflect Refrain this way when I talk about the second deck, the black dominated deck. I'm just going to talk about it in this one video. Okay, so now put this ruler card in your ruler area as a ruler. It doesn't have attack and defense. And the errata also mentions that anything that reduces attack and defense doesn't do anything to this card. Okay, so now, okay, let's see if we can read it well. You tap it, remove 2 magic counters, return target resonator to its owner's hand. Okay, that's an unsummon effect in Magic. Or you tap it, remove X magic counters, and that's your counter spell total cost X. So it's a variable. There's a spell like that in Magic. My memory sucks, so I'm forgetting the name even though I play it all the time. So yeah, you remove 4 counters, you counter something that costs 4. Good, that's very good. Or you remove 4 magic counters, and then you tutor for a card, any card. That's fantastic. It's a tutor for any card, man. And put it into your hand, and then you shuffle your main deck. That is brutal. That's just brutal. You can just do it. I can be doing this all day. All right. So that's a great card. And now let's go through the deck. This particular deck is a red build, and it uses the Rock Egg, Guinevere combo. Now Guinevere used to be banned, and now it's no longer banned. Another thing for you all, if you're interested in cracking packs, which I love cracking Force of Will packs, Rock Egg is in the Moonlit Savior. That set is fantastic. It's got a bunch of really good commons. This card is a common. All right. This card in Magic would probably be a rare. In Force of Will, it's just a lowly common. Okay, so what does Rock Egg do? And again, I'm going to go through the cards, which means I'm going to take a lot of time. But I really want to do that. Okay, I've cracked a lot of packs in this channel, and I just crack the cards and don't even read them, and that's kind of lame. And these are competitive decks. These were decks that were used by real people in a competitive tournament. As a matter of fact, I've got the 4 deck lists that I keep. I have these in a box from Ancient Knights, one of these beautiful booster boxes. And so in here, this deck was played by Lucas Richardson. Okay, so that was it. And when I looked at that top 8, I picked the one that won the tournament, which I think was one of the Reflect Refrain ones. I don't remember which one. And I picked another Reflect Refrain. I picked a Xion and a Machina. But I think 5 of the top 8 were Reflect Refrain. Okay, I didn't want to do 2 of the same deck. That's kind of lame. All right, so Rock Egg cannot attack. It's a 0-200, so you just put it on your board. It does nothing. But when you crack your egg, you put it into your graveyard, you sack it. You can search for a Fire Resonator, reveal it, and put it into your hand, shuffle your main deck. And you're going to do that, I think, often for Guinevere. Okay, so Guinevere, you tap it, draw 2 cards, and then discard a card. That's a huge boost to your deck. You play red mana, red will, tap it, and then you boost something for plus 400. And then you sack it. So it deals damage, and then you sack it. So that's Guinevere. It's a great card. I think it's one of the best resonators in the game, up there with Cheshire Cat from 2 Towers. Then this deck has 4 of this 1-drop fairy, and it's got flying and swiftness. I mean, flying and haste would be a magic. That's great. So 1-drop, 2/3. And then when you tap it, it deals 100 damage to target resonator for each fairy you control, which in this deck you're not going to do anything, much of anything with, because these are the only 4 fairies in your deck, in this particular deck that I reconstructed. Then there's 3 of Prisha, Pursuant of Exploding Flame. It's got swiftness, target attack, and first strike. And I did look it up in the rules. So target attack, I think it said it can attack recovered resonators. Okay, and then for all of 1 green will, it gains flying until end of turn. And when it's put into a graveyard from your field, it deals 500 damage to your opponent, and it's a 7/4. It's very aggro. So it's 1 red green 7/4. So it's a really aggro critter, and there's 3 of them. Then there's a full playset of Lancelots, and Lancelot is a 2-drop mono red, and it's a Knight of the King of the Round Table, and it's got swiftness. And as you choose a card to attack, you must choose this card if able. So this is a lot like some cards in Magic where they attack all. They have to attack. When you drop this, you can't just let it sit there. You have to do something with it. And it's a 6/6, which is pretty aggro. And when it attacks, if this card's attack is 1,000 or more, it deals 700 damage to target resonator. And for all of red will, you pump it for +1. Okay, so you're gonna want to put either a weapon on this, or you're gonna want to put Regalia, and the Regalia is boosting this card. Okay, of course, and here's the Regalia, all banned these days. So all the Regalia in this deck, I don't remember what it has in the sideboard, but it's got a full playset of Orb, which is banned, and a full playset of Levantine, which is also banned. I'm at the 12-minute mark, so after I discuss these 2 cards, then I'm going to discuss the rest of the deck. And there you go. And as I mentioned, because I was talking a little too much, and I'm taking my time, this is going to be a 2-video deck discussion. All right? I love to take my time, and these are beautiful cards and great cards. And this deck was actually played by a real person in a tournament. I mean, that's great. All right, so Levantine, your J ruler gains swiftness, which I think is pretty busted, because if your J ruler is really, really strong, it can cause a lot of damage. In your case here, Refrain doesn't do that, so you don't use that clause here. And then when you tap it, if your J ruler would deal damage, it deals +200. Instead, this doesn't happen here either, so that's not used. When you banish a resonator, you can recover this card. That's really important. Banish something, which means put it into the graveyard. So you already gave, yeah. So that's not used here. So discard another Levantine, you gain red. Banish this card, your J ruler gains imperishable. I think I would use that for Refrain. Again, I'm being a little ignorant about how this deck works because I didn't build it, and it's the reason why I've shied away from showing these decks on videos. But at some point I had to do it, so here I am. Yeah, so you can recover this card, but your so the +200 is for a J ruler only. Okay, so yeah, there you go. Okay, so that's Levantine, and it's banned. And then the Orb, you tap it and you put a magic counter on your J ruler on Refrain. Then you tap it, remove a counter, and if your J ruler has no attack or defense, recover it. So good, you're untapping Refrain with this guy. And for 1 will and tapping it, you remove 2 counters and you draw a card. That's easier for me to understand. I'm still trying to figure out how Levantine plays in this deck because it is not boosting Resonator, and it would be boosting your J ruler when your J ruler is Refrain and doesn't attack. So I think the only thing that I see in here that I would use this for is to protect reflect Refrain. That's all that I can see that I would obviously use this card for. There you go. I'm going to stop right here, and in the second video I'll go into more detail about the rest of the deck.